Have you ever felt like everyone on your team is working in different directions, but that to make a good product for your user, you all need to start working in the same direction? My favorite metaphor for this is herding cats. Herding cats is an idiom denoting a futile attempt to control or organize a class of entities which are inherently uncontrollable, such as trying to corral cats, or in my case, trying to get over 100 platform developers working in the same direction to contribute to a unified developer portal. I'm Maryann Bell, and I'm a senior engineering manager working in cloud tech at Adobe. I work on Adobe's developer portal called Ethos Home. I'm really interested in developer productivity and helping developers enjoy their work and feel confident about the products they make. In this talk, I'll give some insight into our platform journey, how we move to a new mindset, and tools and techniques we use to enable developers to contribute UIs to developer portal. Adobe's developer platform is called Ethos, and we started it in 2016 to take Adobe from box software into the cloud. It's become a pretty big platform since then. To call out just a few metrics, we have over 3,000 users across Adobe, 3,500 services, and we completed 18,000 deploys to production just last quarter to over 30,000 Kubernetes namespaces. For the first 5 years of the platform, we really focused on expanding the capabilities and supporting as many Adobe developers as possible with the platform. Along the way, though, the UIs were somewhat of an afterthought. We ended up with over 5 different web applications representing big chunks of our functionality. A different web app for creating code, provisioning, CI/CD, it goes on. For every new feature, we'd have to cobble together a workflow across these web applications, hopping from one to another and sometimes back again. For any shared functionality, like a navigation button or a login page, as you can see pictured, we had to duplicate the work across 5 different apps. It was really hard to be consistent that way and wasted a lot of time. Each app operated differently also with different stacks, authentication, and RBAC. We also had a really small team of front-end developers, especially in relation to the number of back-end and systems developers in the group. During the time we'd spend designing and developing a single feature within the small front-end team, 7 new UIs would sprout up. And it started to begin like it began to feel like we were herding cats. Everyone was really excited about the capabilities they were adding, but the UI was suffering. Users were getting tangled up in our UIs. There's a disjointed user experience, creating higher barriers to entry for new developers and making it really hard to streamline workflows. It was also really frustrating for developers on our team, having to wait for the front end team to work on the features they wanted, or having to tackle the front end work themselves. We wanted to get all of the developers moving in the same direction so that we could start improving the experience and increasing productivity, but there weren't really enough of us to herd everyone. So how do you get a cat to do what you want it to do? You don't. You help cats do what they want to do. So we started focusing on how we could help developers on the team make good UIs themselves and how we could empower them to do the work that they wanted to do the way they wanted to do it. To do this, we started with a lightweight developer portal, Ethos Home, a React-based front end that ingests APIs across Ethos capabilities. Instead of one team being responsible for all front-end work, we decided to rely on an open development contribution model. And so we opened up the portal for the whole group to contribute their features to. In order for that to work, though, we had to have a change in our platform culture. So we focused on 3 main things: engaging a new mindset, enabling developers with tools, and encouraging contribution. First, we had to start with our mindset. So we had to shift from gatekeepers to gardeners. It used to be that a single team owned most front-end work. This led to a bottleneck and frustration across the group. Rather than limiting front-end work to a team with expertise, we started looking for ways to extend that expertise past the front-end team. Rather than blocking features, we started giving people the tools to plant the seeds of their ideas, And then we would provide help along the way as gardeners, pruning and guiding where necessary, but no longer doing all the planting. This also led to a new definition of success. Success wasn't how many features the front end team could deploy themselves. It became how many features they could help other teams enable. Another important aspect of this was leaning into agile development. Rather than working with multiple dependencies between separate back-end and front-end teams, we started to rely on Scrum teams to own features end-to-end. Not only did that limit dependencies, it also allowed teams to own the full feature lifecycle from design to user feedback. This meant that the people creating the feature also got feedback on the feature so that they could incorporate that feedback as they went. Secondly, we wanted to enable developers with tools. The tool belt that we created is two main things: a design system and good design software. So a design system is a combination of coding patterns and corresponding UI files that give a developer a way to quickly and easily build UIs. For example, a button in a design system would be the visual guidelines representing the button, a design file containing the button and its variations, and a React implementation of that button the developer could use in their code. Having the button defined and documented by the design system makes it so that developers don't get overwhelmed coding full components and all of the visual details involved. Instead, they can leverage the design system's libraries and code samples as building blocks, saving time and effort. The other thing developers need is an intuitive design software tool for visual thinking, especially for things like wireframes and mockups. So for Ethos Home, we chose Adobe's own design system, Spectrum. It has both a React implementation and fully built out UI kits, both of which are accessible on GitHub and the Spectrum website. It's also used across Adobe already, so it's easier for any developers that would want to contribute to the portal to use Spectrum and potentially contribute to our platform. If you want to check out some other available systems, I've included a link here as well. I recommend, something that I do recommend though, is using an existing design system if you're working on a smaller team, because creating your own design system is a huge task. Cross-browser compatibility, accessibility, there are so many things to consider. So if you start with one that already exists, you're off to a better start. For the team's design software, we chose Adobe XD, which is intuitive and accessible. Actually, the best part about Adobe XD is how intuitive it is. A developer without design experience can open the UI kit files and use them to create wireframes without a lot of extra knowledge or training. This way, any developer on the team can use the files, create mockups, and use those for collaboration. It's also important that whatever tool you choose, it's accessible across the team. You want every developer to be able to create and collaborate on the mockups. A cool bonus to call out is that XD has a Spectrum plugin, so that seamlessly connects the design system and the software so that they work together, which is pretty cool. Lastly, we encourage contribution. So we made it really easy to contribute to the project. We made sure that local development setup took less than an hour, and then we had a few lunch and learn sessions to show people how they can contribute and take them through the code base. We also made sure that the contribution process was well documented. And on top of that, we did retrospectives with contributors to get feedback on the contribution process itself. A tip is that if you're going to do knowledge share sessions, it's always good to record so that you can have on video the recording sessions for later, especially if you have someone new to the project. Another part of building a culture of contribution was over-communicating to build trust. Don't forget FaceTime. It's not always easy to get on video, but FaceTime can really help build connections with people working on the project. Along with one-on-ones, we also set up recurring office hours to help with questions and blockers and just get in a little bit more FaceTime. Slack is another channel we use for communication. Our open dev channel is a place people can ask questions and talk about features and reviews that they're working on. This is especially important if you're working across time zones. It's important to have an async way to talk about the project. Another tip is that sharing screens is a great way for people to understand each other visually. It's funny how many times hopping on a screen share can help solve the problem in less than a minute to do something that could have taken 30 minutes to discuss via Slack. So it's been about 2 years since we started the Ethos project. How's it going? So I'd say we've started to knit together the jumble of yarn that was pictured in the beginning of this presentation. We've seen a lot of progress. We've been able to deprecate over 50% of older workflows, as well as ensuring all feature development is currently and in the future in Ethos Home. We also had around 2,000 visitors last month, and multiple teams across the group have already contributed features to Ethos Home. This is very much a work in progress, though, and there are still areas that we're working on. One of the big ones is the front-end knowledge gap. Although design systems make it easier to contribute UIs, it still requires some React knowledge, and that takes time and energy for developers across the group to ramp up on. It also takes time for mindsets to shift, and sometimes it can be slow to build momentum behind new ideas. So it's just important to repeat ideas and help people understand what you're trying to do. To wrap up, I'll leave you with this to think about. If we lower barriers to entry for design and UI creation, we can enable developers to own features end to end, increasing ownership and creativity. If you'd like to connect with me or ask any questions, get into the details of any of the things I've talked about, I'll be available on the PlatformCon Slack today, and I'm also available on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my talk.